you all on this wonderful almost end of 2024. We're thankful that you guys all made it out today, and so we're excited to see what God will do coming into 2025. And so if you've never hung out with us before, maybe a friend brought you, or maybe you came in for the first time, I wanted to say a special welcome to you, because I know that coming to church for the first time can be a hard thing. If you want to go ahead and text the word new to 833-245-6009, or if you're online, you can scan the QR code or text the word there, and we will get back to you when we get the text. That's a real person who responds to you. I see you, Thomas. Hi, buddy. So that's my son. So he doesn't get to see me on stage very often. He just got excited. And so we're so glad to be here with you all. If you're new, glad to be here as well. We're doing an awesome series today. It's a one-time series. I'm talking about Hindsight, so we'll be talking in just a second. So why don't we go ahead and stand up and sing some songs and praise.
Good morning, everybody.
As we think back over our last year, let's think about how our God has done all things. And Christmas reminds us that He's come to do even more. Let's sing it together. Remember those walls that we called sin and shame. They were like prisons that we couldn't escape. But He came, and He died, and He rose. Those walls are rubble now. Remember those giants we called death and grave. They were like mountains that stood in our way. But He came, and He died, and He rose. Those giants are dead now. Sing it out. This is our God, this is who He is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim, this is our God, King Jesus. Remember the fear that took our breath away. Faith so weak that we could barely pray. But He heard every word, every whisper. Now those altars in the wilderness tell the story of His faithfulness. Never once did He fail, and He never will. Come on! This is our God, this is who He is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim, this is our God, King Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, He did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, He did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Sing it out. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Him. This is our God, this is who He is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave.
ashes in the wind. So long to my old friends. Burden and bitterness, you can just keep it moving. Nah, you ain't welcome here. From now till I walk the streets of gold, I'll sing of how you saved my soul. This wayward son has found his way back home. Picked me up, turned me around, placed my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because you healed my heart, changed my name. Forever free, I am not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, I thank God. Well, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Hell, lost another one. I am free. I am free. I am free. Pick me up, turn me around, place my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because you healed my heart, changed my name. Forever free, I am not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, I thank God.
If everybody could bow their heads and pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for giving us the opportunity to worship you today. And I just pray that if there's anybody in this room that has any illness or mental illness, that you would just put your hand over them, God. Just let them know that they're not alone, that we are free if we just call on your name, God. I just thank you for that opportunity every single day to remember that I have somebody to go to, even when I feel like there's nobody around. I pray that somebody can just realize that today, God.
restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you,
Amen. You guys can be seated.
Well, hello again. Hi. My name's Travis, in case you forgot. I'm the Youth and Next Gen pastor here. Thankful for all of you watching online as well. We're glad to be here together and talking about hindsight. And so we're going to take some time and look back at 2024, as most people are probably doing over the course of the next couple weeks here. And we're going to take a look at that, and hopefully you had an excellent Christmas. And as we are wrapping up 2024, I wanted to take some time and tell you about some awesome stuff that happened at Connect Church over the past year. Okay, so first of all, 26 students were part of Mission Akron, which was amazing. We had most of our church, if not all of our church, participate in our first ever Mission Akron Serve Sunday, which was when we took a whole weekend and we just served our community instead of coming to church, and we went and did church in other people's yards and houses and everything, and it was awesome. We had 46 people join our church through church membership this year, which is the most that have joined in a single year since we've opened, which is incredible. And most importantly, we had 10 salvation decisions for Jesus, and we baptized 30 people. Yeah, you can clap for that. And so those are all amazing things to celebrate over the life of Connect Church over the past year. And I am praising God for all of it because it was truly an awesome time. Now, hindsight is something that we all have during this time of year, right? All of your social media is doing it. They're reminding you of all the posts that you've made. Your music streaming platform of choice is telling you all the things that you've listened to over the past year, and you're posting your Spotify raps and everything. All the awards ceremonies that happen during this time of year, from the Oscars to the Globes, the Grammys, the Game Awards, whatever it might be, we're looking back at our past year of media and saying, how did we do? What things were excellent? What things weren't? And we're talking about it, right? And heck, I'm probably, and I can, bet pretty heavily that I'm not the only pastor standing on a stage right now at the 11 o'clock hour talking about the exact same thing that we're going to be talking about right now. And while all of those things are fun and looking back on the past is a good time, it's really interesting that God actually asks his people to remember and look back at their history as well. At the end of his life, there was this guy named Moses, and Moses gives this incredible sermon towards the end. He knows that his time is short. He knows that he's old. He knows that his time of leading Israel in the Old Testament is over, and he gives this really long sermon to the people as he's about to die. And this sermon is him looking at the people that he just spent a majority of his life with. He saw the ups and the downs of Israel. He saw all sorts of good things they did, and he saw all the mistakes, and he reprimanded them just the same. And he's looking at them as he's getting ready to die, and he's like, okay, my friends, family, all these people, you need to remember some things about yourself. You need to remember some things about God, and then know them as you go on without me around. This sermon is what we now call the book of Deuteronomy. And in this book, Moses helps us understand something critical about the importance of hindsight and how that impacts God's kingdom as he himself prepares to leave the earth. Truly, what the book of Deuteronomy is Moses looking back at the time he spent with the people of Israel and encouraging them to see the good things that God did. And he's encouraging them to look at the bad, horrible, awful mistakes that Israel made, which there's a giant list of those too. And I think if you really tune into what's going on in Moses' life, if you really start to see what's going on and what he saw, because Moses saw some unbelievable things in the life of Israel, some things that have not been repeated. This is the same Moses who parted the Red Sea with God's powers. This is the same Moses that brought water out of rocks when they were in the middle of the desert. This is the same Moses that did all the plagues that you might have thought of or heard of or seen in media and other places. That's the exact same guy. And so Moses has a lot to say at the end of his life. And we're going to pick up the story here in chapter 11 and kind of walk through it verse by verse. So here's how he starts. He says this: "You shall therefore," the therefore is there because he just got done talking about some other stuff God did, okay? So he's like, because of all the stuff God did, you should then love the Lord your God and keep his charge, his statutes, his rules, and his commandments always. So he opens up this chapter. He opens up this statement. He says, listen, first and foremost, what I need you to do, Israel, is as I'm moving on, the thing that you need to be able to do and do well, I need you to love God and also do the things he asks you to do. Right? When we see commands, we sometimes see like this rule following, like you must follow the law type of thing. And that's not what Moses is getting at. Look how he starts with love the Lord. And if you love the Lord, and if you love somebody, you'll do the things that they ask you to do out of that love. And so he's saying, please do this when I'm gone. And then he goes on. Look what he says next. He says, and consider today, and then he puts in parentheses, I'll talk about this. He says, since I am not speaking to your children who have not known or seen it. So he's talking to a group of people of Israel as they're getting ready to go into their promised land that God's going to give them. And he's telling the adults, hey, your children didn't see the miracles I'm about to talk about. Your children weren't around. They didn't experience the things that you and I experienced together. And so you need to make sure that your children know them so that they know the good things that God did and the mistakes that you guys specifically, I'm looking at you in the eyeballs, is what Moses is doing here. He's like, I need them to know the mistakes that you guys did, so that they don't repeat. And then he goes on to list them, and he says this: consider the discipline of the Lord your God, his greatness, his mighty hand, and his outstretched arm. We're going to come back to this verse in a second. His signs and his deeds that he did in Egypt to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and to all his land, right? God did some crazy stuff in Pharaoh's life. And then he says this. He says, and what he did, being God, to the army of Egypt, right? He wiped it out. To their horses and to their chariots, and now he made the water of the Red Sea flow over them as he pursued after you, and how the Lord destroyed them to this day. So he says, remember all the things that God did in order to get you Israelites out of slavery. It was this crazy thing. He changed the king's life for the better or for the worse. I don't know. That's for us to decide as we're looking back at it, right? We see that he destroyed the armies. He gave him opportunity. He did all these things within the life of Egypt and got the Israelites out of slavery. And then he says this, and what he did to you in the wilderness, okay, oh boy, until he came to this place. And so he reminds them of their biggest mistake right after the biggest thing God had done in their life. Because they were forced to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because of some major mistakes they made towards God. So in the middle of him saying, I need you to remember the greatness of God, he actually starts by saying, I need you to remember the discipline of God. Don't forget the great things he did, but also don't forget you guys messed up pretty big. And look what he says next. He goes on with mistakes. He says, in what he did to Dathan and Abiram and the sons of Eliab, sons of Reuben, how the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed them up with their households and their tents and every living thing that followed them in the midst of all of Israel. If you don't know this story, it's in the book of Numbers. You should go read it sometime. It's crazy. These two guys kind of goof off and they do some horrible things within the tent of meeting and all this other stuff. And then God causes an earthquake that swallows up their entire bloodline and kills them all on the spot. I know, Bible. And so it's pretty crazy. And so what Moses does here is he's like, don't forget that crazy thing happened and that you guys made a mistake that caused God to have an earthquake that 8 people show up. So don't forget that one. And then he says this. He ends this section with something really important. He says, for your eyes have seen all the great work of the Lord that he did. So in the middle of this, both the good, miraculous, incredible things and the big mistakes that God had to discipline them, he sums all of this up as you saw the great work that God did, both the good and the bad. So Moses takes that time to list out the discipline of when Israel made mistakes and the great things, the wonderful miracles that God did in their midst. Now, I said we were going to come back to a verse. We're going to go back to verse 2 here, and we're going to talk about it, because this is the most important verse in this section, believe it or not. He says this, right? Because, and consider today, and I highlighted the word consider twice, because we talked about this parenthesis already. So he says, and consider the discipline and the greatness, right? These are the two things he asks them to think about. And when you think about this in English, right, this word consider, most of the time when we think of that word, we're thinking of it in the context of discussing something or making an argument, right? Have you considered all of the evidence? Have you thought about it from this perspective? Have you considered if they were there and saw something, right? You're doing that as a way of building an argument, building some rhetoric, and trying to make a point, which Moses is doing. But if you didn't know this, the Bible wasn't written in English. And Moses, actually, the word that he uses here for consider, I'm going to put up here on the screen, is actually the word yada, and this is the Hebrew for it. And it's actually much deeper than just saying to consider something or to think about something. It's this idea of to know. If those of you who have watched Seinfeld in the room and you know yada, 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 that's exactly what this word is, right? And they're filling in the blank and they're saying, you know. right? That's the idea. If you've never watched Seinfeld, you should. It holds up. It's wonderful. But yada, he says yada. So what we translate as consider is actually the word for to know something. And I don't just mean to know like an intellectual trivia fact. Like, it's not like you're going to go to trivia night and crush it because you yada'd something, right? That's not what he's saying. This is actually the exact same word that the Bible uses to talk about a husband and wife having sex and knowing each other. Right? So the idea here of this word is that somebody would intimately know, intimately understand, intimately reflect upon, intimately remember something deep within their soul. So when Moses asks them to yada God's discipline and yada God's greatness, he's actually asking them to truly understand deep within their being all the things that God has done in them and through them and for them. He's asking the people to look back at all the things that they've done throughout their life, the miraculous big things, and how he helped them through their mistakes, and to know or yada that God is wonderful in the middle of all of it. So when we're talking about having hindsight, we're talking about looking back at the year, I'm not really talking about making a list of highlights and things to remember from your 2024, though you could do that too. What I'm really talking about is how important and valuable it is to take an honest approach to reflecting on the year you had, both the good and the bad, just as Moses instructed them to do, and see where God showed up in the middle of it. Because let's be honest for a second. Some of us in here have had some incredible things happen this year, right? Babies were born, people were married, people were saved, houses were bought, grades were passed, diplomas were granted, engagements happened, and if you're anything like me, you had plenty of good cups of coffee, right? And some of us had some absolutely horrible things happen this year. We lost jobs. There were deaths in our family. There's divorce, abuse, addictions, and everything in between. And truly, if we're honest about our 2024, I would be willing to bet that your life was more of a mix of those two things than you probably want to admit. And I'm asking the honest question of, have you taken the time to honestly reflect upon both the good and the bad and see how they've changed your life and the lives of the people around you? As much as you like to think that your life is just your life, it's not. Your life always affects other people around you. So all of that being said, why does Moses encourage Israel to consider all of these things as he's getting ready to die? Excuse me. Because we end up in very dangerous territory when we fail to reflect, when we fail to yada on the things that have happened to us, on the things that God has done and the way that God has intervened in our mistakes and our good. Sure, you might not take the time to think about your 2024 right now, and it probably won't hurt you for right now. But eventually, these things have a way of compounding, don't they? Eventually, what'll happen is whole swaths of your life will pass you by, and suddenly you'll be surrounded by people that you barely know, in places you barely recognize or understand, and you're asking the question, how in the world did I get here? And you might even end up as somebody who's so stuck in the past that you have an inability to live in the present or look forward to the future. And a lot of the time, it's because you didn't take the time to actually think, because the events of your past year are leading you somewhere. All of these life events eventually lead you somewhere. They lead you down a path, and they have a destination. Your 2024 will affect the next years of your life and the lives of the people around you for years to come. And your ability to have healthy, godly insight directly influences your present and future legacy. Because what happens is our past actually compounds into legacy. Legacy is the things that we're remembered for, the things we're known for, the things we're yadad for. In other words, when you're looking back at this particular year, you're only looking back at part of the story. And this year also undoubtedly influences the trajectory of your life because your past is leading you somewhere. So it begs the question, what do you want to be known for? What do you want to be yadad for? Are you the person who just wants to be really well liked? That you are the person who had all the friends, right? Do you want to be the person with a lot of money and the best career and the 2.5 kids? I don't know how you have half a kid, and the dog and the boat and the house and the whole thing just because you said you were successful and you wanted that? Are you trying to be the best mom and dad or the best grandma or grandpa you could possibly be? Are you trying to be the sibling that all the other siblings look up to as the golden child so you can, I don't know, have like wreak jealousy within your household or something? I'm not sure. Are you trying to be the most physically fit person you can and your Instagram story is full of all the times you went to CrossFit and you have a tracker of how many protein shakes you drank this past year? I don't know. What are you trying to be known for? And as you start to answer this question of what you want to be known for, you'll start to see how the events of 2024 and beyond affect and change you. Because the reality is all of your choices, all of your passions, all of your failures, all of your successes, all of your mindsets, all of it is leading you somewhere. And having good hindsight along the way is how we start to see how God is shaping us. We need to be able to look at where our life is going now, because each of your lives has purpose. Each of your lives will make a difference in the lives of the people around you. So where are your lives leading? What are you trying to do to get to your destination? And more importantly, what is God trying to do within you to get you there? God has a lot to say about where we're going in life. He talks about it a lot, and Paul actually addresses this exact same issue in multiple places throughout his letters in the New Testament. But we're going to look at one of the places that he looks at it in Ephesians chapter 2. And so we're just going to dive in. We're going to take some time and kind of unpack it as we go. The thing I need you to pay attention to when we're reading, before we start reading, is the verbs, okay? This is a really helpful Bible reading technique if you want one. This one's for free. You don't have to pay me for it. Is you can look at the verbs anytime that an author is writing, and I guarantee you're going to see something different about a passage. What tense they're in. If they're past, present, future, you're going to see something incredible. Okay, so here's what Paul says. Verbs, right? And you were, past tense, dead in trespasses and sins. He's talking to believers. So if you're a follower of Jesus, this is talking about you. If you're not a follower of Jesus, the things Paul's about to say apply to you currently. So here's what he says. You were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience. Okay, so what he starts off with. He says, past tense, if you're a follower of Jesus, this used to be you. Don't forget. Have good hindsight. Don't forget that this was you. If you don't follow Jesus yet, this is what he's going to start talking about. Can we go back one slide, please? He says that you were dead in your trespasses and sins. Trespasses are anything, and sins, this is just an idea that says anything that you do or has been done to you or in your presence that's evil or falls short of God. Right? So like these things affect us. They change us. Sin changes your life. It actually, Paul says, makes you dead. And what's interesting here is he says, you used to walk this way, following the course of this world, right? Everybody else thinks this way. Look what he says next. He says, among whom we all once lived. In case you started to count yourself out, Paul clues you back in. He's like, just kidding, it does apply to you. In case you think it didn't apply, he says all. He says, among whom we all used to live in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind. And so what's interesting here is Paul says, you know how the rest of the world thinks is this way. Is if you're just going about life, following the things that make you happy, following any fleeting desire that passes through your head or your body, and you're thinking, man, that might be fun, that would be good, I should just do that because that's my truth, I should live this way because I think that's the best way to live, or whatever it might be. He says that's how everybody else lives, the rest of mankind. And what that lands in is wrath, which lands in your death, which he talked about a verse ago. So that's where one life can lead, right? Carrying out any desire that's in your heart, living on passion alone, being like everybody else. Look what he says next, starting in verse 4. But God, anytime Paul says this phrase, you pay attention big time, okay? But God, being rich in mercy, mercy's not getting something you do deserve. Because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. This verse is huge. He says that God's so rich in mercy, he doesn't give you the wrath that you do deserve, but he loved you so much that even in the middle of you messing up, meaning you don't have to change right away to follow Jesus, he did all of this in the middle of your mistakes. Sounds a little bit like Israel, right? He made us alive together with Christ by grace. This is getting something you don't deserve. You've been saved. Look what he says next. He says, and not only has Jesus given you life, it's not just life. It doesn't stop there. He says he raised you up with him and seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. He puts us in a place of ruling authority in the world right alongside Jesus. It's not just regular life. It's like abundant, wonderful, incredible, joyous life. It's not just pulling you out from not dying. It's more than that. So, why? He says, this is why we did it. That in the coming ages he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace and kindness towards us in Christ Jesus. God changes the trajectory of your life. Where you were once like everybody else, Jesus offers salvation, spiritual riches, and kindness. Where we were once barreling towards death, Jesus actually brings us true, actual life. And you might be saying to yourself, Travis, that's all fine and good, man. But I'm just a regular person. How can my life possibly matter? I feel insignificant. Why does it matter where I'm going? Why does it matter what happened over the past year? I just want to be happy. Is that so bad? And those are all fair questions. I think the best way for me to address those questions is actually with some personal stories from my family, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to look at some legacy and look at my family history with hindsight, and you're going to see something important and powerful about God, I promise you. It'll blow your mind. So I'm going to put up the first photo here, and this is hanging up in my sister's living room, and if you can't read it from here, it's a quote from Lilo and Stitch. It says, Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. Right, and this is in her dining room, and what's awesome about this, she built this herself, and it's incredible. These are all four of our grandparents, and underneath these, which we don't have a picture of, is all of the friends and family she's made along the way who matter to to her and are important, and she's always adding to it as more important people show up in her life over time. And it's incredible because you sit down at her giant dining room table that she got custom made to sit and look at this, and you're like, this is family. Like, this is what we actually should be doing. And it's all under the 4 grandparents on purpose. So I want to talk about my 4 grandparents, okay? So here's some stories. Here's my first grandparent. This is my grandma, Audrey. She's right here. This was on her wedding day to my pop Coda. And Audrey was awesome, so I hear, but I didn't really know her because she passed away when my dad was 10 years old. That death changed my life. That death changed my sister's life. That death changed my mom's life. Because, yes, it's very sad that she passed away when my dad was 10. I'm not going to say it's not. But it's worse than that. Because she didn't just die, she died of intense medical malpractice. So here's what happened. She was going in for some routine surgery. Nobody remembers what exactly it was at this point because it was so long ago. My dad's old. I'm saying that because I'm looking at him and he's laughing about it. And so, but nobody remembers which one it was. But she was only supposed to be under for like 30 to 40 minutes. And all over her chart, all the doctors, all the everybody, it has written on it, do not administer this one particular type of anesthesia. She's very allergic. She will die. Like all over the place. They talked about it the whole time, the whole thing. They get back into the OR. They put her under with the stuff she's not allergic to. And then you have to keep administering anesthesia over the course of the surgery. So, you don't wake up in the middle of a surgery because that'd be horrible. And so while they're in there, this doctor says, hey, give her the drug she's allergic to. He doesn't say it exactly like that. And all the nurses and all the people in the OR are like, no, she's allergic to it. And he said, do it anyway. She dies. He walks out of the OR, goes up to my grandpa and says, hey, look, man, we talked about this. Like, no surgeries without risk. Sometimes these things happen. And she didn't make it. I'm so sorry. Bold-faced lie. How do we know that was a lie? My grandpa worked in the health insurance industry, and he was super well liked. This doctor that did the surgery had a lot of social power, and so nobody wanted to speak up against him for a long time. And towards the end of this doctor's career, pulled my grandpa aside and said, hey, Bill, there's some things you got to know about how Audrey passed away. He did not take that nicely. So the legacy, while we have good memories of Grandma Audrey, my dad has some, but he was 10. My aunts, who are 10 and 12 years older, have way more good memories of her, but a lot of us don't really know anything of her other than a legacy of injustice and absence. And that changed my life, and my dad's, and my mom's, and my sister's. Let's talk about Pop Coda for a second, right? This is one of my favorite pictures of him. He was a World War II vet. He flew in the Air Force and helped fly planes and do all that stuff. I actually have his jacket in my room because I like to remember him, and he was really great. And he was a World War II vet, but also, we'll go on to the next photo here. This is him with my dad on their wedding day, on my dad and mom's wedding day. And my grandpa was a single dad in a time where being a single dad was unheard of. That just wasn't a thing back then. And why is he so happy here is because he never thought that my dad would get married. Just didn't think it would happen. And for him, being old school World War II vet who literally built his own house from the ground up by himself, him and his brother, old-fashioned guy wanted the Makota bloodline to pass on, and he thought that had long come and gone, but yet my dad got married, and he was like, oh boy, there might be grandkids, right? And then look at this next photo. This is him meeting me and my sister, right? So he's triumphantly excited here because he's holding the next male son who carries on the bloodline, right? And then you've got over here, he's holding my sister. You can't tell, but he's ecstatic. Okay, I'm serious though, he was, because he had Parkinson's really bad, and between the 3 years of when I was born and my sister was born, it really kind of messed with his ability to show facial expressions. But he loved my sister. She could do literally zero wrong ever. She literally kicked my teeth out of my face, and he gave her a high five. Like, it's not exaggerating. Like, actually kicked my teeth out one time. And so, like, he loved her so much. And he loved us. World War II vet, single dad, incredibly stubborn. Stubborn to the point where he made it your problem that he was stubborn. Rough. His legacy was one of perseverance and strength in the middle of tragedy. So those are my dad's parents. Let's talk about my mom's. So this is Pop Pop Boat. This is when he was 18. I called him that when I was a kid because Pop Pop owned a boat. I was clever. And so I actually look almost exactly like this when he was 18. If I don't have a beard, you can't tell because the beard really messes it up, but the family resemblance is uncannily strong. And so I look very similar to him. And I'm going to go to the next picture of him too here. This is him with my mom, and this is them on my mom's wedding day, and he's dancing. And I love this photo of him because he was an incredible storyteller, like maybe the best storyteller I've ever met in my entire life. Like, he could tell you a story about a piece of lint he found underneath the dryer, and you'd be, like, enthralled. You'd be like, I want to hear more about this lint. Please keep going. He was genuinely hilarious. His wit was unmatched. He was always the life of the party. Like, I know he's dancing real goofy here, but he loved to dance. He loved jazz music. He loved hanging out with people and being the life of the party, and he'd throw these extravagant big parties all the time. And all my cousins would be there, and my family, and we'd all be sitting at these really big, long tables, whether they were at restaurants or at his house, and he had this habit that was infuriating, but really funny in hindsight, where he would on purpose put himself in the middle of these long tables, and he would be eating his own food, and you'd be about to try and eat your food, and he'd all of a sudden you just hear Pop Pop go, "You're not eating that, are you?" And he'd stab whatever you're about to eat, and then he'd eat it in front of you, and no dessert was safe. He had a massive sweet tooth, but he'd steal your food all the time. And you're like, why are you stealing my food, dude? We're all eating the same meatballs. You have the same meatball on your plate as I'm eating on my plate. Why are we doing this? But like, it was just a thing he did, and it became a massive joke in our family. But Pop Pop Boat's legacy was also extremely complicated. You see, he was an exceptional businessman. He worked for a really big bank. He was really, really good at his job. And he made sure that you knew that he was better off than you. You see, legacy was so important to him that it consumed him to the point where he missed it altogether. In hindsight, we can look back and remember the wonderful things about Pop Pop Boat, but it can't be without remembering the tarnished, emotional, financial, and mental abuse that he caused my mom and his wife. And some of that, I kid you not, we're still unraveling to this day. Horrible. So let's talk about my grandma. This is Mimi, and this is Pop Pop Boat. This is them being all happy and cute. And Mimi was one of my favorite people on the face of the planet. She tragically passed away from breast cancer like well over 20 years ago. Well, it was breast cancer that metastasized into liver cancer. Women, please get your mammograms, please. And we'll go on to the next photo. This is her with my sister hanging out, and she's being all wonderful. And then we'll go on to the next photo, too. This is my mom with her mom. And you see what Mimi's legacy was she clung close to Christ. See, in the middle of all of this mess that was her husband, from throwing all these extravagant parties that she didn't want anything to do with because she was a background, most introverted person you'd ever meet in your entire life, but she'd do it anyway because she loved seeing him happy. But in the middle of this abuse and in the middle of all this, she tried to draw her kids close, but my uncle kind of had his own dysfunctions and things and mess going on. That's a story for a different day. But what she was able to do was cling close to Jesus and brought my mom along with her. And my mom came to know Jesus at a really young age. And what Mimi ultimately did was she passed down her faith. She passed down her faith to my mom, who passed it down to me and my sister, who then passed it to my dad, who didn't come to know Jesus because of the bitterness of his mom dying when he was 10 until he was 50 years old. And so Mimi's the reason I'm standing here, talking to you, and your life is maybe being changed by the gospel right now because of her. So the life you're living, the 2024 that you had, is telling a story. And I promise it's leaving a legacy that will impact people to come. I promise. Connection point is this. Your life tells a story. Is it of life or death? The legacy of sin and death is so clear. It's of separation and loss of relationship and loss of a hug and loss of a quick phone call and the abuse and the destruction and the hurt and the pain that all come along with it. But it's clear that there's one legacy that only Jesus can offer, and that's life itself. Look what he says in John chapter 10. He says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, and I came they may have life and have it abundantly." It's abundant, true, wonderful, joyous life that Jesus offers, and it changes people's lives. And so I'm wondering today, I have one question as we leave, and I'll put it up on the screen. What are you passing down? Are you like my Pop boat with his fork? Where you're way more concerned about everybody else's plates than you're concerned with the one that's right in front of your face the whole time? Are you like my Pop Coda, where you're doing your very best to persevere in the midst of tragedy and you can't quite figure out how to get your next breath and you're just hoping that it will come again and you don't know where to look? I promise you it's Jesus. Or are you like my Mimi, where your relationship with Christ is what truly matters? And that even in death, you offer life to other generations to come. Let's pray. Jesus, we're grateful. Grateful for you, how you change people's lives. God, I ask that for my friends and family in here, that as they're thinking about the year that you've given them, that they've had, that they would see you working. That they would see you working in the middle of all of it. That they would seek you so that they don't get stuck in the past and they can actually live in the present and carry on into a future legacy. I ask for those people in here who don't know you yet, that you would bring them from death to life, that you would change the trajectory of their life, and that as they go into 2025, they would know you as Savior. And God, I ask for those who already know you, that we would reflect honestly and well, but we would know who you are. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay. I have some announcements as we're getting ready to go into 2025. If you're looking to join our church and be part of our membership and jump in there, I want you to know that Connect 101 is coming up on Sunday, January 26th. That's at noon. There's free lunch and childcare. You can sign up either using the QR code right here. You can go to our website, connectchurch.xyz/Connect101. And this is an awesome spot. You don't have to sign anything to come to this class. We do offer that if you want to join the church. But if you are just looking to learn about us, ask us some questions, figure out what we're all about and why, this is the spot for you. And so we'd love to have you come out, eat some food with us, and ask your questions, and we'll tell you about Connect Church, okay? And then also, if you're looking for our midweeks to return, that's all of our things like our youth, kids, Bible studies, life groups, all the stuff that happens at Connect Church that's not on Sundays. That starts up the week of January 8th. That's that first Wednesday back. And if you want all the information about all of those things, you can go to our website, connectchurch.xyz, and jump into something as you start 2025. I promise you won't regret it. And if you're looking to give today as part of your worship, and you're looking to worship the Lord in that way, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can do so either at connectchurch.xyz/give. You can do so in person by grabbing an envelope in the chair in front of you and dropping it in the box on your way out later. Or you can do so by the snail mail, and that's our address in case you just stumbled in here. I don't know. And so we would love to have you do that. But if you're a guest, please feel no obligation to give. This is something that we do as part of the Connect Church family, as part of what we do as our regular worship. And so if you're not there yet, no pressure. It's all good. But if you needed to do that, I figured I'd let you know. Well, hey, as we're going into 2025, let's remember what God has done. Let's yada what God has done over the past year. And we will see you next week.